This episode of the Out of Bounds podcast is sponsored by Fisher Skis, and you can visit them at www.fishersports.com. Hi there. My name is Adam Jabber. This is the Out of Bounds podcast. I'm having a really rough time doing intros today, so this is take a couple. My guest today is Jodi Cortes. Jodi is the centerpiece to a Fox suspension series on YouTube called DIALED. He is way more popular on YouTube than I am. He's way more popular probably in real life than I am. It was an honor to have him on the show. I really enjoy his content personally. I have for a while. And I don't know, this was just a great conversation where we talk about things like how much he hates Strava, e-bikes he is not a fan of in general. There are, we kind of go through that. It's not just a blanket statement. He's starting an OnlyFans. That's breaking news. And downhill racing, and then we kind of go through some agree, disagree questions, which I think is a segment that I'm keeping because I actually like doing those. So enjoy the episode. His audio is a little weird, but I think we figured out it gets better. So just hang tight. It's a really good conversation. It's worth a listen, I promise. Before we jump into the show, there's new merch available. We have new hats, as I keep saying. Buy some hats, buy some T-shirts. In the month of July, we are donating every dollar of every sticker sale. So buy some stickers to Planned Parenthood or an applicable organization of your choosing. Just let us know in the order notes, and that's where the money will go. Every dollar. Not part of it, not a dollar of every sale, not a portion, not the proceeds, whatever the all, like everything. So hopefully that'll do some good. Hopefully some money will go a decent length. That's the goal, to help the rights of other human beings, which is not a thing that I feel like we should have to be fighting for, but I'm happy that we are. So, go do that. Before we jump into the show, we have sponsors. Sierra Nevada, they've been a sponsor of the show for a long time. They're a wonderful partner of ours. If you haven't yet, check out their new Summer Break IPA. Check out their new Hop Splash, which is a non-alcoholic product that they offer. Probably my favorite product that they offer, if we're being totally honest. It's like a seltzer that has like a hoppy flavor to it. Completely non-alcoholic. It is amazing. They also, Ethan, if you could scroll up. Go back. Come on, man. They have a whole bunch of, scroll down again. We're going to little things. They also have Sunny Little Thing and Wild Little Thing, which are two of my favorites. A little more sour, a little lighter, a little more summer friendly. Great product offerings. If you are over the age of 21, please enjoy those responsibly. They also have merch. If you are looking for some Sierra Nevada merch, just hit me up. We have some pretty aggressive discount codes for some amazing Sierra Nevada merch that you can't really get anywhere else. So yeah, check out Sierra Nevada if you're over the age of 21. Cool. Next up, we have Fisher. Fisher is our title sponsor for the year 2022. They make an excellent product that is coming to shelves this fall, and I have it in my hands, finally. This is the best kids boot that has ever been made. Why is it the best kids boot? We're going to talk about it in a Gear Talk coming soon. It's amazing. Like, I'm so psyched on it. It's soft up top. It's easy to get into. We're doing lots of bits on that, okay? So if you have kids, you have little kids, that's the boot you need. They also have a brand new Ranger series, as we've talked about many times before. It's really, really good. I would implore you to go check it out. A couple of these will be featured in the Gear Guide, not because they're a sponsor, but because they're actually really good. And I mean that with my whole heart, because the 96 is actually one of the most fun skis that I've skied, period, because it's quick, it's dicey, it's fun. You can take it wherever you want, tour with it, ski groomers with it, ski some soft stuff with it, ski crud, do whatever the fuck you want. That's the ski. Goes 90 all the way up to 116. So huge offering and huge commitment from Fisher in the new Ranger line. So check that stuff out. And now, Revel Bikes, our final sponsor of the day. As you know, as you maybe don't know, I've been riding a Rail 29 with some Fox suspension on it. Shout out Jordi. it's an amazing product. Like I've really enjoyed riding that thing. This is kind of what I was referring to when I was like, are downhill bikes necessary? You'll hear me ask that question. I don't think they are, because this thing does everything. This does everything I want it to and more. You got to remember, this is coming from someone who rides a cross-country bike on not cross-country trails, but that's your jam. Revel's got you covered too. They've got a Ranger. I mean, they've got a Rascal too. Like they have the whole range of bike product that you could possibly want. They're becoming this like complete bike company, this complete mountain bike company that I think a couple years ago it just wasn't a thing. They have a new dirt jumper that's out too called the Tweety, which is sick. Like they're making everything. They're making bikes that they want to ride, that the people in the factory in Carbondale want to ride. And I think that that's really cool. And I'm psyched for them. I'm psyched to be a part of it. And I'm psyched that I get to ride them. Like, if we're being honest, like that's the best part, is that I get to ride these things because they are incredible. So with that, leave a review. Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts. Don't leave a review for my shitty ad reads and my horrible intros. Leave a review for the conversations and the guests that we have on the platform. Be sure to listen to all the other shows on the network. Check out reviews dropping on outofpodcast.com. And subscribe to the YouTube. If you're not a YouTube subscriber, go do that. That's new reviews are out now. There actually should be a new rail review dedicated by this date. And if there's not, Ethan's fired. So, and that means everyone's fired if Ethan's fired. So, that being said, enjoy the episode with Jodi Cortes. Bye. Jodi, tell people who you are, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Well, yeah, my name's Jordi, and I work for Fox. Fox Factory, not Fox Racing, so, and not Fox News.
Not that's
which we get a few of those comments every time.
That's probably, is there? Yeah, do people still not get it that there's like multiple different Fox companies like that? I feel like that should
not
be easy
so
enough.
Much. Even when you explain it, like, no, that's the other Fox. Like, oh yeah, you have those bells. No, that's the other Fox.
That's a good
right. So you have them or not?
Yeah. I never thought about it. I actually never thought about the correlation at all, except for like with the clothing company. The clothing company and the suspension company, a little more.
They were the same.
Really?
Yeah, there's two brothers that started Fox Factory.
That is news to me. I had no idea.
And then kind of had a falling out, split up, and there's Fox Head and Fox Tail.
No shit. Wow, that's good intel. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool story.
Huh. Interesting. All right. Well, anyway, that's not why I brought you on. I brought you on to talk.
It even more.
Yeah. Now I'm like, all right. Well, what question should I ask? Tell, like, what's your background? How did you get into suspension? How did you get the gig at Fox? Let's kind of start there.
My background is pretty random. I don't really have training in anything. I just kind of go through life doing things until they don't work out, and then I do something else. I ran a motorcycle shop for a long time. I worked as a kind of high-end fabricator for a long time. And then I started working as a bike mechanic for a race team, and that transitioned into meeting people at Fox, and I've always kind of been fascinated by suspension and making things better apart from the rider, so making the rider experience better. And I ended up talking to the guy who started the race department at Fox. We were pretty decent friends. We rode bikes together, and he offered me a job, and that was that. I didn't know anything about anything when I started there, and was so scared about learning suspension. People were taking things apart on benches, and I was like, I'm never put this back together. I don't understand any of this.
It's by far.
And then within a year, it's like, this is easy. I got this.
It's by far the most daunting thing, I think, when you look at it from like what the consumer understands, and even in bike shops, what they understand as far as suspension. Like, you look at suspension as a whole, and you're like, what is going on, right? Like, it's the scariest thing, at least to me, of all the things in the bike world.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd probably rather work on suspension than brakes.
Really?
I think so. Or now we have e-bikes. That's just a whole nother disaster.
I guess that's a good point. That is a good point. What is there, real quick, is there an actual difference between a shock that is tuned for an e-bike versus a shock that is tuned for a regular mountain bike? And I assume the answer is yes, and I know that there is some level of difference, but what does that mean for the consumer? Like, what is actually different?
That honestly, that's really up to the manufacturer.
Oh, really?
So we'll do testing with each manufacturer, and if they want to spec a specific tune for their e-bike and call it e-bike tune, then that's what they'll do. We provide different chassis for forks that are definitely e-bike specific, just to deal with heavier weights and somewhat different riding styles for the majority of e-bikes.
Yeah.
But a shock chassis is the same. It would just be internals that are a little bit different.
Yeah. Has that whole category been a surprise to you at all over the last few years? Like how much e-bikes have blown up? And I like it's kind of almost been a slow burn, and then all of a sudden now it's like everybody comes in looking for an e-bike, and they're like willing to accept that e-bikes, especially full suspension e-bikes, cost, you know, $7 to $10,000 and over, you know. Like I think it's a very weird, it's a weird thing to me, but people seem to be like pretty receptive towards it. And I don't know when it happened or how it happened, but has that been a surprise to you at all?
That's an interesting question. I guess riding the first couple of e-bikes and seeing how absolutely terrible they were, that it's a bit of a surprise that they've taken off so hard, but it's also the industry has gotten behind it, and it's such a massive push for e-bikes. And it has been, at least where I live, the e-bike thing took off during COVID. That kind of coincided with people not going to work so much, working from home. And I live like an hour from Silicon Valley, so we had an entire tech sector that's pretty wealthy, really, that are able to buy e-bikes that were no longer going to work.
Yeah.
And that really opened my eyes to how many e-bikes there are right now. Europe's always been receptive to e-bikes, and it's a whole different scene there.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's really,
go ahead.
It's so regional. Like, I'm super anti e-bike.
Are you?
But that's because, I think they have a function. I think commuting and trail work, trail patrol, stuff like that, they're amazing. They're great, right? But they're still totally disposable. And most of the people that are riding them are new or returning to mountain bikes, have no idea what anything is, and are just getting themselves out into situations that they shouldn't be in. You know, mountain biking is not easy. It's not safe.
Right. That's part of it.
And it's not for everyone. And the ability to get yourself into a situation that you're not necessarily ready for probably isn't the best thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's my biggest concern is like, and I put out a tweet like a few weeks ago where I was talking about like, okay, like the biggest thing with e-bikes is that if you put, it's like you have an idiot and you put him on an e-bike, he's just an idiot moving really fast, right? Like that's my biggest argument against it, I guess. My biggest argument for it is like accessibility for people who have like, I don't know, who have an injury or have something that that physically makes them not, like I have a friend who started High Fives, which is a foundation that basically like helps people who have had life-changing injuries get back out and do the sports that they love and all that stuff. And e-bikes have changed his life, and he's who changed my opinion on it. Because initially I was like, fuck e-bikes, it's the worst thing in the entire world. He was like, I can't ride a bike, period, without an e-bike. Like, he's like, I actually can't pedal, but now I can. He's like, I'm respectful. I am riding it on trails that are for e-bikes, and that I'm with that, right? I think if everybody treated it that way, we'd be in an awesome place with e-bikes, right? Like,
100%.
It's a totally different thing.
It's a tool,
right?
But how many people do you also see? They're like, oh yeah, I got this e-bike because I'm rehabbing my knee, and then 3 years later, they're still on the fucking e-bike and they're still rehabbing their knee.
Yeah,
like, dude, that's not how it works.
Yeah, and I think the point of like
things are hard.
Yeah, dude, that's the thing is like you're putting yourself in this position, like you said, where you can get hurt and like you're moving fast on single track with limited control on a 50 plus pound bicycle. It's fucking dangerous. And the etiquette thing I think is where the gap is. And I think shops and brands, I think that responsibility of like teaching that etiquette kind of falls on those companies, right?
For sure. It falls on all of us.
Right.
We're not immune to it. I just, it's like we're not educating people about bicycles, period. And then you add in a motor
right.
that allows people to do things dumber a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So there's a huge gap there, and it just needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Bikes have like this weird smoke and mirrors thing though, I think. And that's kind of the inherent problem with the whole thing, right? Is like expensive bikes and like, I don't know, there's always like this smoke and mirrors thing for everything to do with cycling in a certain sense. Like nobody knows what they're looking at, right? They only know what they've been told. The information is like, it's out there, but it's kind of hard to figure out what's opinion based, what's actual information, what should be done in an area. Like it's hard and it's a lot to digest, especially if someone's a casual user. And that's just with bikes in general, I think, right?
Yeah, it is for sure.
So that would be a thing I think I'd like to, I don't know, I'd hope gets better and better over the course of time. I mean, who knows?
I think it is getting better, and at least from my perspective and interacting with people a few years ago versus today, things seem to have changed a little bit. Like there's talk about things. People are starting to listen about suspension. It's like, what other $10,000 purchase would you do blindly?
That's a really good point.
And then roll it in your house and not do a thing.
Yeah, I can't think of one off the top of my head at all.
Even guys that are buying motos that are cheaper than most mountain bikes.
Right.
You do some research, you read some articles, you look at things, you go to different dealers and you try stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And in general, like if you're really into it, you take the suspension off, you send it somewhere, you have it set up for you.
Right.
Like, that's the thing.
Right.
But with bikes, it's like, I just dropped 12 grand. And, I don't have a shock pump. Do I need one of those?
Yeah. Yeah, fuck a shock pump. Most people don't have bike pumps at their house, like a regular bicycle pump. Like it's just like we're not even there. Don't even go there yet.
Like week by week, you just see the tire getting lower and lower.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like on one hand, we're making everything super easy and accessible because of the internet. And on the other hand, there's so much information that it's like even harder to find what good information is now. So we're like at this weird crossroads where basically you just learn from your closest friends or your next closest buddy that rides a bike too. And then that's how you get in. I mean, it's honestly how I got into it too. Was like, it's how a lot of people get into it. Is you have a friend that rides bikes and you ride bikes with your friend and you pick up things and you meet other people and it grows like that, which is nice. It's organic, but it's progressional, right? Versus now I think people get thrown into the deep end so quickly. It's, I don't know. It's a very bizarre thing.
Yeah, I mean, where else can you walk into a store as long as you have a good credit card or cash?
Yeah.
And buy something that's winning World Cups, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to happen with a car. It's not going to happen with a motorcycle.
Right.
Like with a bike, you can buy the exact same thing people are racing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even think people understand that.
The work is a whole different deal.
Yeah, right. That's one, and we'll get into that part later. But I haven't agree or disagree exactly on this topic, so we'll get to that at the end. But kind of on this topic in terms of good information and providing that information, I wanted to talk to you about DIALED in the series and how that kind of started and what that's been like as an experience for you, because I imagine it's kind of weird to have a camera pointed at your face every race weekend, often, and I imagine fairly aggressively, like they're up on you. But you guys are providing this awesome service to people that I don't even know. I assume you guys realize it, but I'm not positive you guys realize how effective it is at getting people to understand suspension and what suspension does and give a shit about suspension. It's amazing that people care that much, like for, I don't know, 45, 50, 60,000 people to watch a video on suspension and get committed to a series about not a bike, a part of a bike, and specifically the way that part of a bike works. So just talk to me a little bit about what that experience has been like.
It's been pretty wild, I have to say. I think it kind of started with the This Is PD videos that Steel City Media was doing, and then that kind of transitioned into the Syndicate videos. And from there, my newer boss at the time, the big boss of us, was really a fan of it and kind of took it and ran with it. And it's like, we need to have our own thing and get some videographers out there and turn this into a real series. And it happened so gradually, from This Is PD to Syndicate to doing our own thing. We had one video guy for the first year. And I think it's just one of those things you don't really focus on until you stop and look back. And now we have Jake and Schaefer doing it. It's like 2 video guys full time doing this series. And I'll go somewhere and somebody will be like, dude, I love your videos. And it's still like, huh?
Yeah.
You know what? Oh, yeah. So the fact that people are watching them and are stoked on them and are learning is pretty special. That was my kind of goal, was to demystify everything and just let people understand that it's really not that hard. It's like what we do gets tricky, but you're dealing with athletes and it's a whole different deal.
Yeah.
Just the stress of racing and having somebody there to bounce ideas off of, but you can do all this stuff yourself.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the goal, is to just demystify the whole situation. I don't know if that always works out, but
I don't know, dude. I think it's been, to me, it's put in very simple and fun terms, and it's watchable. I think that's the biggest difference between that and like watching a suspension tech, right? Like, because like you can go and watch a suspension tutorial and it'll get a lot of views, but people are watching it to do the service themselves. I think they're not looking to understand it. They're just looking to gain the information they need, the same way people treat recipes, right? Like, I need to make breadsticks today. How the fuck do I make breadsticks? This is the information. I take it and I don't care about it after that. Dialed is a thing that people go back and they watch over and over and over again because it's digestible and it's fun and it interacts with all their favorite athletes, but it also has you as kind of a centerpiece there, which is like kind of like guiding where things go. And I forget the gentleman's name that's on, that is like the host this year. Connor's Jake. Yeah. It's like but it really focuses on the athletes. It focuses on everybody in the pits. And I think that's what makes it so fun for people, is this is an interaction at the highest level. And they're talking about it in simple terms, the same way you would talk to your buddy about it on the trail. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that we are all just people.
Right.
We're all just hanging out and trying to do a job. The athletes, us, whoever, there's no difference.
Right. Yeah, it's I think that it's been very interesting for me to watch it over the past few years, because I thought I'd get bored of it, but the switch up is very, like, it's fun. Like, sometimes it's just like you on a trail running through like different ways, like bracketing, for example. Like, that was a thing that was extremely helpful for me to think about, like, how I did my suspension, because every time I'd look, and I don't know, I work in a shop, I'm a mechanic, I know how to do these things, but I never thought of bracketing as a way to set up my suspension. And I never thought about, like, okay, maybe I should actually pay attention to it, instead of being like, let me crank this shit up, see how it feels. If it feels bad, I'll crank it all the way down. And if it feels bad, maybe I'll find a middle point. And I feel like that's how a lot of people set their shit up, but it's been a very well produced series. So my question, I guess, is how do you think it's been effective overall, like, as a product? And if there was something that you could change about the series, what would that be?
I hope it's been effective. I don't know what the product is really. It's not incredibly defined for me. That is part of it's just entertainment, right?
Right.
And part of it is to inform, and hopefully little bits of that get through to people. I've had plenty of people come up and say, "Hey, I watched the videos," and that got me to actually start setting my suspension up. But I've also had people just message me and be like, "Hey, what should I put in my foot?" And that's like the exact opposite of what we've been trying to teach people the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, follow the process. It's not that hard. It might take you a little bit of time, but it's your time and you're going to learn.
Yeah.
As opposed to just hitting me up on Saturday morning on Instagram and asking me for settings for your bike you just bought.
How often does that happen?
A lot.
Yeah, like, I bet.
A lot.
Do you answer? What is your answer?
I won't. If it's somebody, normally I'll just delete them because I find it kind of rude. Like, I get it. Instagram is so easily available, and it's like, hey, this guy does suspension. I'm just going to message him on the weekend and ask him to set my suspension.
Yeah, it is rude. It's totally rude.
Yeah,
it's totally rude.
Like, well, the first sentence is, "I love DIALED. I watched them all." Right then, you should have stopped and gone back and watched one that told you how to set your suspension up.
This is a very good point. It's funny because people people message me all the time about gear shit, and like for the most part, like that's the platform that we've created is like, okay, like we are here to be accessible. We're here to offer, insight on what we can. That part's really good. But when people message me personally, like on my shit, I'm like, this is the wrong, like, and that's the thing I imagine you struggle with is like your brand as you and you as Jordi are very, it's the same handle. It's the same thing. It's the same. Yeah. People think that it's like you have a team of people answering at all hours of the day, I think sometimes. Right. And it's just not the reality.
No, definitely not. It's just me. And there's definitely people that come at me with solid information and actually trying to fix a problem.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit different.
Right.
It's like, hey, I'm doing this, and this, and I'm struggling with this.
Right.
And at least that is, I can wade through the info in a few minutes and be like, well, you should try this. But most people are just like, do this for me.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I'm having this problem. And then it would be like, what's your air pressure? Where's your rebound? How many volume spacers? Are you counting the proper way?
Yeah.
And you're talking about like an hour-long session of just trying to fish information out of people that are hitting you up for info.
Right. This is a paid service.
So supremely lazy to not even have the proper information to start your question.
Right.
It kind of bugs the shit out of me.
It should, rightfully so. You should start an OnlyFans and just offer suspension help. That's what you should do. That's really the solution I think that we're getting to here. Is I fucking had Lachlan on a few weeks ago and he was talking about squishy bits and he's like, that's like the best thing that I'm like, he's like, I love doing it. But it's like a paid thing that he does to set up people's suspension, right? Versus just hitting him up on Instagram. And I'm sure his answer would be the same where you're like, if you just message him, like, what should I set my suspension at? He'll probably be like, fuck you. Like it. Yeah.
It's just not possible.
Yeah. Right. And it's so specific. Like if you watch any of the dialed shit, like it doesn't matter if you weigh the same, like your settings are still going to be different, like person to person and bike to bike and condition to condition, area to area. Like it's going to change. That's the whole fucking point of the series.
Yeah, basically.
Is like, it's that's got to be a little front, but maybe OnlyFans. That's the solution. Start thinking about it. That's a side gig. What? Yeah, I don't think I've ever asked you for anything suspension related other than when I asked you about Tallboy running a coil on a Tallboy because I had never seen anyone do that before, and that was actually very helpful. So I appreciate you not deleting me and giving me the answer that because I looked for hours before I messaged you, and I was like, I can't find.
That's awesome.
You
did the research.
I couldn't find anything.
You hit a brick wall.
Yeah, I was like, I literally couldn't find anything, and I was just like, all right, fuck, all right, like this is it. But like, I was also coming from a place where I'm like, when people hit me up blindly, do no research at all, do no legwork. It's funny because that's, in some ways, people like call that gatekeeping, where you're like, you're not giving people the answers. You're not, and it's not though, right? There's a very fine line, and that line is putting in the effort to try something. And it's the same conversation we just had about e-biking, where like, if you get to a certain point and you have the skill set and you have the knowledge and you're like willing to put in that work, you can get there, right? You're not just going out there blind and just swinging for the fences.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, we get the same thing at races.
Yeah.
You show up to a World Cup and you roll up to the tent and you're like, hey, can you just set my bike up real quick?
No way. People actually do that?
Oh, yeah.
What?
What aircraft are you running? Well, I mean, I'm not totally sure. I don't have my phone with me. You're in a World Cup. Like, this is the highest level of racing.
And you're just now thinking
about setting your bike up.
Yeah.
And if you've done it wrong, that's okay. But if you haven't done it at all, and you don't even know where you are, that's not okay.
Yeah. Like, get to a point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can, yeah. I get that. That sounds insane to me that somebody would do that, but people do a lot of weird shit.
Do you imagine showing up
to a World Cup ski race like with the wrong size boots?
Yeah, and
or you're just like, yeah, I don't know, these suck.
Yeah.
Like, well, did you try them on before? No. What size should I be? Well, I don't know. What size should you wear?
That's the biggest difference between bike and ski, I think, is like that would be so not tolerated in skiing. Like you would not even be able to get in the door to that point, right? Bike is like so much more, like there are so many more accessible points that somebody can get into a World Cup reasonably easy, right? It's not, I'm sure you know, it's not like everybody does not have their shit together. Everybody does not have their shit all dialed in, versus a ski World Cup is very much like you are prepped. And ski racers in particular is probably a bad example because they are the opposite of downhill racers in my experience, where they are like, they have like everybody's prepped their gear. They are extremely neurotic about every single little detail other than like their performance in a lot of cases. They are like the skis matter the most, the tuning matters the most, everything matters the most. And I guess in a way there is a lot of similarities to downhill racing as I'm saying it out loud, but it's way more gear and condition dependent, I feel like. And people are much lazier in skiing about what they like. They show up with their gear, and they kind of expect the gear to do the work in a lot of ways.
Right.
So
I think that there's definitely parallels
to bike racing as well. That happens.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the highest level, does it? Like,
yeah. Not for the people that are actually winning.
Right.
Or like being competitive, but there's definitely a pack of people that are just there.
And on the one hand, that's great. Like, it's accessible,
and
right,
you get people interested in the sport and racing. But on the other hand, it is
a World Cup,
right?
Right.
This should be the sharp end of the spear.
Yeah.
But there aren't a whole lot of options either. There's not like a starter series. There's not tons of racing for everyone to do. It's like, if you can get into a World Cup, you do.
And sometimes there's people that are
like, they're working hard and they're figuring stuff out and they're working on a shoestring budget, but they do it well.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that are just supremely gifted and they're just showing up, throwing stuff on the street and then riding down the hill with no clue.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I guess it can go both ways. Yeah.
It's a weird sport.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think both of those things are like, that's a good point though, is like, it can happen both ways, right? Like it can happen where you're like, you are supremely talented and you just don't give a shit. Like you're just like, I'm going to run it and I'm going to do whatever, and whatever happens, and you can win that way. Right. And I think there's people who have to work extremely hard to get there on a shoestring budget and make it happen, but they still can make it happen for themselves. And that's what, to me, is so cool about bike racing is like, you don't have to start with this like enormous amount of money. You can make it work, right? Like you can ride a clapped out bike and make it fucking happen for yourself if you care enough, I think. And that's one of the biggest differences between that and skiing is really, really, really hard to be competitive because everything costs money. Like literally everything from the lift tickets to the entry fees to the travel to the, like all this shit is way more complicated. I think it eliminates people from contention in a lot of ways versus bikes is like, if you have a bike, you could ride the wrong bike and be competitive, right? Like you can get there if you're skilled enough and
absolutely.
you're willing to work hard enough.
For sure. It's still 90% rider.
Right. Which
my job is
suspension. And I'm telling you that most of the speed is from the rider.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine so. So let's talk about your job for a second. What your official job title, according to LinkedIn, is Global Race Department Manager at Fox Factory. This is still accurate, I assume. What does that mean?
I hope so.
Maybe. Well, we'll see. What does that mean? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? What does your job actually entail? Because I think, like we mentioned, people probably just assume that you stand in front of a camera all day, and that's your job.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
No, so wintertime I'm home at our office in Scotts Valley, which is like a little suburb of Santa Cruz. And we have a race department there with a few guys. We go through product, we do product testing, we do we work with athletes in the off season. Basically, my job is to
hopefully present a functional product to our top
athletes and win races.
Mm.
And whatever that entails, whether it's hiring tech staff or planning racing or working on vehicles and getting all that stuff sorted. That's kind of my job.
How much does the product actually change year to year? Obviously, when something huge comes out, like a new damper or something like that, like that's obviously a very big change. But in general, how much would you say a product changes season to season? When you guys are making those tweaks, right? Like, what are you guys looking for? And because I think people always think that like the newest thing is the best thing and it's changed so much and you've reinvented the wheel every time. So I guess I'm curious to know from your side of things, what that actually looks like and what kind of tweaks you guys are searching for. For what you can actually tell me.
Yeah. I mean, really, historically, our racers have been on the same product you can buy. And again, that goes in cycles. So it's like we'll launch something new. The top athletes have probably been on it for a few months at least, or we hope. Then you got a year of kind of sorting out that product.
And then maybe the following year, you start to actually figure out some flaws and
issues and start working through some things.
Mm.
And then you get a third year of development before the next product cycle.
Mm.
So the bike industry is pretty weird in that it doesn't seem to learn a whole lot. It constantly reinvents itself.
Yeah.
If you look at a lot of other products in racing,
the functional product is very similar to what it was 10 years ago.
It's just a refinement.
Right.
And bike stuff is kind of the opposite. It's like everything's new every time it comes out.
Right.
And we've kind of gotten into this weird cycle of people expecting everything to be new.
I mean, even automotive,
it's like you look at car cycles.
And if you really stripped off the bodywork and the paint, not a
whole lot changes.
Right.
But a bike can be completely different every time.
Is that frustrating to you? It's extremely frustrating to me because it feels like there's a new standard every year that you have to keep up with, maybe multiple new standards in a year. And I'm like, it becomes very hard to keep up with. And it also feels like you're reselling, at least like from the retail to consumer end, right? You're reselling things to people a lot where you're like, oh, you just bought this bike. Cool. Here's what's changed. Here's why it's so great here. Like, and that's retail in general, but you're like, things have actually changed significantly enough in the course of 5 years or 6 years that you can make an argument that it is substantially better, right? And you ride a bike from 5 years ago and you're like, fuck, man, like we're in a whole different world. Like 5-6 years ago, 29ers were still not like 29er full suspensions were still not a super complete product, right? Like half of them were shit still. So, and now we're at this point where if you don't have a good full suspension 29er, you're way out, right? Like you're beyond that point. So is that frustrating to you that it changes so often, or is it exciting?
I don't mind the change if it's been thought of. Like if you're changing something to make a better product, that's great. But if you're changing something just because you have this idea that it might be better for somebody, or of the two bikes you've ridden, this is the better one.
Yeah.
Then I just find that kind of a waste.
Yeah.
I just think
that we're very slow to learn and study as an industry.
Mm.
You know, there can't be 50 different ways to make a bike work.
Yeah.
If you look at any other
sport, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
I mean, again,
back to moto, it's a two-wheeled vehicle that a lot of people are familiar with. Those things look exactly the same as they did 10 years ago.
Right. Right.
They're not
significantly different. And if you take every brand and lay them across each other, they'd be very, very close.
Yeah. Yeah. Versus
there's differences. It's not apples to apples, but bikes are so wildly different.
No, for sure. 10 years ago, like think about bikes 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like it's an insane thing, like how much has changed. It's every few years it's different, and prices drop and drivetrains go crazy. Like it's like you should see someone walk in and see an Eagle drivetrain for the first time. Like the look on their face when they're like, what is that for? You know, like who's climbing? And you're like, no, gear ratio. Like that change is so rapid that it causes a shock factor. And sometimes I think bike companies use that shock factor just to sell product. And I'm like, to me, I think of like Trek is they do this the most to me in my head, because they just change shit sometimes to make it look a certain way or feel a certain way, or like have something that is different in picture. And it may not actually work any different. And Specialized does this as well. And I'm sure plenty of other brands
I think
do.
we all do.
I'm sure every company does it to a certain. Yeah, nobody's unique. I just think of like every time I say that, I just think of that fucking Super Caliber, and I'm like, that is the worst looking bike that I've ever seen in my life. But like, and it's just like anyway, not getting on this tangent, but I just wonder if that's a harmful thing for the industry long term. And I don't know that we're not going to come to an answer here, but it's hard to explain to a consumer, especially because of how much bikes grew during the pandemic and how many more people bought bikes and how many more people kind of like gained an interest in riding a bike. That was one of my biggest worries right off the rip was, is it too, like, are people going to get bored of this, right? Are people just going to drop off and the whole industry is going to like start to go downhill because people are going to realize like, okay, this is really complicated. It was really fucking hard to get a bike. And yeah, bikes are fun, but like there's a lot of shit going on. It's expensive and shit's changing every couple of years. Like I think, I don't know, that new buyer is kind of who I'm thinking about, I guess, when I'm saying this.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a hard question for me because
I think I'm incredibly biased by growing up where I did.
Okay.
In Santa Cruz, where basically everything's illegal.
Yeah. Right.
So it's a
very limited resource.
Right.
And I'm in Canada
right now. I just raced the Revelstoke Enduro this
weekend.
That,
yeah.
And I travel all the time, whatever, but it's still a shock to me to go somewhere and people are friendly and stoked. And they're like, oh, you're riding a bike? That's awesome.
Yeah.
You come to Santa Cruz and people are like, you're riding a bike? Fuck. I wish you'd just go home.
Why?
It's like surfing.
I still don't understand. I still don't get it.
There's no room, right? And we're starting to crowd all these people into one little area.
Yeah.
And then you introduce e-bikes and you introduce just basic ignorance.
Shuttling. I saw that.
Shuttling.
Like fucking A.
Riding e-bikes up downhill trails.
Yeah.
It's just a lack
of respect that you'd see at any campsite or anything that happened during COVID, things getting swarmed, campsites getting destroyed.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that happens when things get crowded. And it's the same with surf breaks. It's like everybody's now a surfer.
Yeah.
Well, there's only a few hundred yards of a good break here. So
yeah.
How is that going to work? If we bring in another 100 people and sell them all surfboards and wetsuits, where are they going to go? And depending on where you live, that is or isn't an issue. So I've just been shaped by where I grew up and where I learned to ride.
Right. Yeah.
Like obviously a lot of European bike parks, that's just not a problem. Or Seems Canada, that's just not a problem. There's plenty of room for everybody to ride.
It's funny, New England's small, but I don't really think it's a problem here either. Like people just go and ride. Like I was complaining at the trailhead the other day that I felt like it was busy all the time. There's like fucking 10 cars in the parking lot or something, and like there's 30 miles, 40 miles of trails, like, and I'm whining about 10 cars in the parking lot and I have to see one person while I'm out there and it's so busy, so I get, it is totally area specific. The problem I think is exactly what you're talking about though, is like Santa Cruz or even here, the areas that people know about, the like must hit spots. People are skipping their like local trail and they're going directly to those spots, I guess.
Absolutely.
And that's what's crowding it, right? They know, they figured it out. They're like, I'm a mountain biker now and I'm going to these places because these are the best. Why would I go anywhere but the best? And you lose that I'm riding my local trail system feel, that like this is my home, this is where I ride, right?
Yeah.
And
we're not talking 10 cars, we're talking like 400 cars.
Right. That's
in an area that's tiny.
Yeah.
It's a few hundred acres.
Yeah.
It's fully illegal.
Fully illegal. Yeah.
There's a Facebook group named UCSC Highway 9 Trails. And it's all these idiots posting their videos of these illegal trail networks.
Giving maps.
Giving directions. It's just mind-blowing to me.
How is it so open? Like, people are so open about it, though. Like, how is it an illegal trail system that's so highly trafficked that, I guess my question is, why is it still illegal? And why, if it's that illegal, why is everybody fucking talking about it? Like, stop talking about it then. Like, I get that it is amazing. Like, I've ridden those trails. It's fucking amazing. And now I'm talking about it now and we're fucked. So this is like, this is ruining everything for you. So I apologize, but it's everywhere. Like, everybody just constantly is talking about it. How the fuck is it still illegal? And why, like, how has it not gotten like axed, if that's the point? Like, if there's so many idiots just posting it on Strava and like posting every route that they do and talking, like, I get we want to share these trails, but, and even like, dude, I don't know. That's such a weird thing to me. Illegal trails in general are very, like, it's a very bizarre discussion.
Yeah, it is. The whole internet celebrity thing is a bizarre discussion, and that, like, all the Strava shit, it started with Strava. It started with people. But Strava was one of the bigger evils in this whole thing as well. It's like, I remember when Strava came out, social media was still a pretty small thing.
Yeah.
You started to see these signs of people cutting trails or doing shit.
Yeah.
And it's just
mind blowing. I mean, it's no different than cheating at a race, right?
Yeah. It's true.
Cheating, however you want to do it. And now people are Strava doping and doing all kinds of other stuff. It's just, it's so insane. And then you got these other guys with their YouTube channels, posting illegal trail networks, driving around trying to show how cool they are.
And bragging about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the part that drives me a little insane. Like, I get it. You go to this place, you want to talk about it, right? Because it's beautiful. It's amazing, whatever. And this goes for any trail system. But, like, if you're on private property or you're on like property that is not made for those things. Like people do it here all the time. Well, they'll ride trails that are illegal, myself included, that ride these trails. But then they'll go and they'll like completely blow up these spots that are like behind people's houses. Like the cut through is behind somebody's house that you got specific permission to go ride. And then all of a sudden, like somebody's like, oh, this is it now. This is the spot. Like this is where everybody go. And then it's fucking ruined. And that part bums me out. It's just really hard. Like, how do you manage it? Like, how do you manage going on a ride? You just go ride your bike and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. Like, there's no extra steps. There's no Strava. Do you have a Strava? You're fully against it.
Fully against it.
Oh, I love that.
I just find it so bizarre.
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, I just want to track my rides. Like, bullshit. There's tons of ways to track your rides.
Yeah.
You're just trying to compare yourself to somebody else that probably didn't know they were racing. And it's not what it is. It's not racing. I'm sorry. Like if you want to race, go race.
Well, so that's my thing. Okay, so here's my argument, because I actually like Strava to a certain extent. And I don't mind admitting it, because I like Strava because it motivates me to go ride often. Right. It motivates me to go out there and be like, my buddy just did a ride. He did 100. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go ride 30 miles because like I just saw he did something that's going to motivate me to get off my ass and actually like spend some personal time with myself. Right. Like, so that's my reasoning for it. I think leaderboards, though, I think that should be fucking axed. If they axe that tomorrow, I'd be psyched about it. Like like everybody likes to brag about KOMs and I do it kind of facetiously sometimes, but because I don't give a fuck. Like you go and you do one trail, there's somebody faster than you, guaranteed, that as soon as they come, like Phil Gamon's a perfect example. Like that dude goes to random areas and just steals KOMs. Like that's funny to me. Like that's amazing. Like you just, because there is somebody faster than you that's going to take that fucking thing. Exactly like you said, it's not a real race. You're just like, people have this need to be competitive and that's awesome, but not at the expense of mountain bikers. Mountain bikers are dicks in air quotes because they're fucking running people off the trail that are just out there walking their dogs, or they're out there Strava chasing or cutting corners in trail. Like you see it in every trail system, like where people have cut off trail, and you're just like, no matter what the trail builders do to, block those areas, somebody's finding a way, a new hole to cut through on a segment for no reason other than to like brag to their friends.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I guess I don't have a problem with Strava for doing things like that, and as long as they're healthy. But Strava also has a history of not involving themselves in anything. They're just like, here's our platform, you use it on the trails, not our problem.
Responsible trail use is not a thing we care about. Yeah.
Right. Where it would be quite easy for them to black out areas.
Yeah.
I mean, Trailforks does it.
Yeah, it's true.
So it can't be that hard. And those guys are selling all your info. I don't care. You think you're on Strava, you think you're off heat maps, you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just not seeing that you're on heat maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
You're riding illegal trails with Strava, you're a dick.
Yeah. This is good info for people. So for people going to Santa Cruz.
Or anywhere else.
Or anywhere.
You didn't build it. You don't get to tell other people where it is unless it's legal. It's just not cool.
Right. And this is, again, just to clarify, this is for illegal trails specifically. This is like stuff that you got specific permission to ride. We're not saying like don't go to like Robinson State Park, for example. Like go do whatever the fuck you want there. It's allowed there, right? Like I have an illegal trail system near my house that I ride all the time, and I do my best to not fucking put it on there at all. And if I do, it's private more often than not, because it's like, you don't want that shit getting shut down. You really don't. Like, it's really hard to be put in a position where, like, I don't know, you don't want to be the one that ruins it for everybody. And that's especially when there's these beautiful open spaces that are like, people are basically just being okay with you using them.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's not you don't have real permission. You just have, like, people are just being okay. They're just accepting that it's done. Right. So
it's just happening.
Yeah, it's just happening. Okay. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I want to get through some agree or disagrees that I was watching Dialed this morning, actually, and I was like preparing for this, and I was like, okay, Let's ask some questions that I think can go either way, and I think your answers could go either way. So we'll start with number one. Most suspension adjustments are unnecessary for most riders. Agree or disagree? And we're talking past the baseline, like correct air in your shock. Generally.
So you're saying once you're past the basics of like setting,
I'm 200 pounds. Yes,
rebound.
right. I'm 200 pounds. I put 100 PSI on my fork. Once you're past the very baseline, suspension adjustments.
As a blanket statement, I would agree with that.
Okay.
I would say that most things are, from my experience, most things seem to be over most people's heads, and they don't seem to be interested in putting in the effort.
Yeah. People want to just go ride their bike.
There's no point in having it.
Yeah. I would agree. I think I'm in agreement with your agreeance on this topic. It's a hard one because I like having all the buttons and all the clickies and playing with them, and it's fun for me. Like I actually enjoy that part of the process, but the majority of the people that I ride with, many of whom are better riders than me, have no fucking interest, nor do they have the same amount of settings, and they're just like, you know what, whatever. Like it works, right? And and I think that's a really important thing because we talk about all of this tech all the time, and it's cool to talk about the newest and latest and greatest. People think that they need it. I think the baseline is like, as long as you get to a basic setting point, you can just go ride your bike.
Yeah.
Will it make it better? Sure. But who knows? You might also make it worse. So.
There's that.
Agree or disagree? Sag is the most important adjustment you could make on your bike if you could only set one thing.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. It's and on this topic, what like sag varies in what you hear that is like an acceptable range of sag varies very often, I think. How does someone find what their sag should be at? Like, I mean, because I feel like every manufacturer website has a different thing on it, and it just confuses the general populace. So is there a quick way to just figure out where you should be at?
I think the biggest thing to remember is that it doesn't matter.
What matters is that you start.
Right.
And if you're like, well,
I would set sag, except that this guy said 25, and this guy said 30, and this guy said 32.
just pick one and start, right? Like,
right.
Start the process.
Right.
And you can bracket sag
just like you can bracket anything else.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't work for you, then try a different one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to mire yourself in the details before you've even started, you're just committing to failure right away.
Yeah.
Like, just get going. Write down what you're doing and start riding.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of these questions can be answered by like, just go ride your bike. And that's been like my whole bit lately is like, just fuck off and just go actually pedal. Like that would be really nice if people did that a little more often, especially like just so much shit going on in the world. Like it's really nice to just go out and ride it's really like there's so much shit going on in the world. Just go get off your stupid phone and just go ride your bike.
Yeah.
Okay. Agree or disagree? Most riders you work with need to talk about suspension changes more than they actually need to make suspension changes.
Ooh. Most riders, I feel.
Man,
that's a hard one.
Because I get both.
Most of
I know
the
you get
guys
both.
that I talk to, the guys that I deal with all the time, it's mostly about talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's like starting the week off,
ending the week the same place you were last week, but we went through 10 different setups.
Yeah.
But
then all the people that have never done anything, those guys are the opposite. Like they need to pay attention to what's going on.
Right.
So that's a 50-50 one right there.
I'm right down the middle.
Yeah. I think like what prompted this for me obviously is like Greg Minar is obviously the most famous, I think, of the puzzlers, like where he's just like every video it feels like has him freaking out or wondering about this thing or that thing or the other thing and what change should make. And it feels like you end up at almost the same point very often as where you started, and sometimes and obviously Greg is very smart, and if you haven't watched the series, like, he knows what he's talking about, so it's kind of a different level of conversation in a lot of ways, but a lot of times I feel like those changes are just like, they're not changes. They're just like trying things and then going back to the standard.
A lot of times that's true.
And it really is working through a process, whether it's like his state of mind at the time.
Yeah.
And having to adapt the bike to that.
And then working into the fastest bit.
Or if it's, some other change that he's made and we're having to adapt the suspension to that. But you're talking about somebody who's faster than 99.9% of the population.
Yeah.
And as soon as you take even 1% step down, these things don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking about splitting milliseconds here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about the elite of the elite for the last 20 years. Yeah.
If you're looking...
Even at World Cup level, if you're looking at the top 20, it's a whole different deal than the top 50 or 60.
Yeah. It's crazy how much that's separated, like even at that level, right? Like the top 50 versus the top 10 or the top 20. People think if you're there, but you're kind of not.
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, you are, and you're a phenomenal bike rider.
Right.
But the top 10 is a different world.
Yeah. Which is crazy that's in the same... I guess it's not. I guess a lot of things are like that, but it's so different. You see it every single race, and it's like a crazy thing if somebody in that top 40, 50 makes it into the top 15. It's like a huge win.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny though, like if you ever watch hard enduro stuff or any like moto qualifying, you watch these guys, they look like complete goons.
Yeah.
And they're so much better than you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like...
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe the guy that qualified 50th, you watch him in a section, you're like, that guy can't ride a bike. I promise you, he's so much better than you'll ever be. Yeah. These things are that hard, and the sport is that difficult that it makes incredibly gifted people look bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of it. It's I can't imagine how often you guys get the comment, it's like, oh, my buddy's really fast. Like my buddy, I'm sure. Yeah. Like I'm sure your buddy's really fast. It's like, I don't know, the Tour de France is this week, right? Like your buddy's really fast, but he's not. There's a different level of competition at that real top tier.
There's also a lot of guys that are really fast that just
won't ever be racers.
Right.
You don't have the mentality.
Yeah. How much of it do you think is
physical? The
physical?
ability to win is hard.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah, and that separates a lot of people, I would imagine. The mental aspect of it and the physical aspect of it is, are almost equally important in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a
relatively crappy bike rider.
And I go experience, like, this Rebel stuff thing was
way over my head physically.
But it puts me in their shoes. And I'm stressing, I'm getting butterflies, I'm doing dumb things because I'm stressed out. And that just lets you kind of communicate with these athletes a little bit better. It's not the same, but it is also at the same time, you're going through the emotions in the same way.
Yeah.
And for me, that really helps to just be like, it's so easy to criticize with people. Like, if you look at a lot of the dial comments, they're like, how does this guy not know how to set up his bike? This guy's been racing 20 years. Like, it's not that easy.
There's a lot of other things going on, and sometimes
you just want to talk to somebody that is going to say, you're okay, we did this, you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be a very comforting thing for a lot of these athletes because, like, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever even gotten off a plane and just went for a bike ride right away, but like that, even that fucking shit's hard.
Oh God,
it wrecks you. Like it wrecks you. And you've every excuse in the book.
They're flying in, building a bike,
and going into practice the next day. There's no way.
And riding the hardest shit in the world, like on clapped out downhill track.
Yeah,
a lot of the time. Yeah, fuck. All right, two more quick ones. Agree or disagree? downhill bikes are only necessary in 2022 for true downhill racing.
I guess I disagree.
Really?
I think plenty of people have fun in the park on down. I mean, necessary, yeah. You can ride a trail bike everywhere, but
I know plenty of people that have downhill bikes.
bikes and just go to bike parks and ride around and they have fun.
I do too, and I just think a lot of those people could be better served riding a trail bike. That's my thing. Is like you need a dual crowd.
Wouldn't ride it.
Yeah, I guess. All right.
You know, it's one of those things. I don't even have a downhill bike right now.
Yeah.
I live in California.
There's nowhere to ride downhill.
There's no point.
I'm gone all year, and I'm not going to travel with a downhill.
Bike and leave a trail bike at home.
Right.
My riding
window is like 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning most of the time.
Right.
At least on the road.
So downhill bikes are not super helpful.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I didn't think that was going to be a disagree, but I very much see the point. Last one. Dirt bikes are cooler than mountain bikes. Cooler, obviously, being a very blanket and broad statement. Agree or disagree?
Yeah,
I disagree.
I just think anytime you bring up cool, you've already lost.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I don't care either, and I think I like bikes better. But for some reason I thought that you were gonna say dirt bikes. That would have been if I was betting, that would have been my guess.
I
love motos, but bikes are a lifelong passion.
Yeah.
And if I was going to pick one, I'd definitely pick a bike. I mean, not to mention that you can use it as a tool for so many other things, whereas motocross bike, you're not really going to go to the store. I mean, you could.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And riding moto is
a lot more of a hassle than riding a mountain bike.
Definitely. Especially when you talk about illegal trails, and if we get down that rabbit hole, like, holy shit. Cool. Jordi, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Where can people find you to ask you questions about their air pressure on Instagram? Where can people find your OnlyFans? Where can people find Dialed on YouTube? Give me the whole bit.
You can't find me. Impossible.
Incognito. I appreciate the time. Dialed, people should go watch that series. It's very good, and I can't thank you enough for that thing. It's great. It's actually very helpful because I'll like leave it for the mechanics on in the shop, or I have over the past few years, just to like have something on in the background, and like maybe they'll pick up a thing or two, and same, like I picked up a ton of shit that I didn't think about. So once again, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.